That's a quite interesting story. Times of Israel, that's where I saw it anyway, reported that Channel 12 News, which I think Channel 12 News of Israel, have reported that the Biden team is already in talks with Iranian officials regarding how they can, I don't know, return to the deal or amend the situation. And they have further on, they went on to say that they have actually updated Israeli officials. American officials have updated Israeli officials on the talks, and Netanyahu. Furthermore, Netanyahu is planning to set up a team to officially negotiate with Biden team about their negotiations with Iran, and that team is going to include officials from Ministry of Defense, Ministry of Intelligence, Mossad, Foreign Ministry, and people from Security Council of the Israeli government. And possibly it's going to be headed by the head of Mossad, who's I think who last week when this was reported was in the USA and was meeting with US officials. So it is not unlikely that US officials are already like, as we know, the last deal when the last deal, we didn't know this at the time, but the negotiations originally started in Yemen 6 months before the Iranian presidential elections that led to Rouhani coming to power. So I think it is quite likely that there are already negotiations on their way, and it is quite likely that Israelis are being updated by Americans. How much these negotiations are going to be fruitful, that's a whole different story. Interestingly, Dominic Raab, the British foreign minister, just came out today and said that US has until the Iranian elections, which will be held this coming summer, and they will have until then to be able to amend the relations with the Iranian regime, or with the with the whole 5+1 group. So that's interesting. At the same time, it seems basically the prospects of a deal. I mean, it's not unlikely. It's quite likely because Biden is quite adamant that he's going to come back to the deal. But there are two major issues. One is that there are a lot of people who are pushing for no deal, and they had a much harder position before because Trump was the one who was opposing the deal, and Trump is he's a extremely unpopular person within security, intelligentsia, and all that. So now, though, there are all these articles being written that Biden shouldn't negotiate. For example, there was this article by James Acton. I apologize if I mispronounce his name. He wrote this article on Foreign Policy website, and it was about how Biden shouldn't go back to the deal because the original deal was bad, and now they're going to get even worse deal because Iran is far more belligerent now, and Iran feels vindicated now, so they're gonna and they feel stronger, so they're gonna cause more trouble in the region, and they're not gonna want more out of the deal. At the same time, Biden team knows that they have problems of credibility. The fact that Trump basically disregarded the deal has that deal and the Paris climate deal and many other deals has led to basically a credibility loss for the administration, for the U.S. government as a whole. So it would be, I mean, I would assume Iranians would require certain mechanisms that would ensure compliance by the U.S. or ensures that if they leave or if they don't comply, Iranian money or Iranian interest is not hurt. Let me just read this. Biden's pick for this is from an article, and we put the link below for sure. Biden's pick for Deputy Secretary of State Wendy Sherman acknowledged the difficulties in an interview with Boston News show last month. We are going to work hard at this because we have lost credibility. We are seen as weaker after Trump, said Sherman, who was Barack Obama's lead U.S. negotiator for the 2015 Iran nuclear deal. So with Wendy Sherman, who was a lead negotiator coming in, though, I think the prospects are quite positive as a whole. Oh, the new head of CIA is also somebody who was heavily involved in the negotiations. So, that's another very, very positive sign. So, I think the prospects are very positive, but at the same time, there are all those people who oppose the deal because, not because like Trump, they are necessarily protectionist, but because they're far more imperialist. They're coming back into the game, so that's a thing to look out for. At the same time, Iran will want more stringent, as I said, deal this time around, a deal that would include more mechanisms that would ensure the safety of their interest. And I don't know how much U.S. government can, make concessions, considering the powerful lobbies that are working for the military-industrial complex, for the certain, Arabic countries, for IPAC, as the right wing of Israeli politics, all of that. So, there are good signs, there are bad signs, we'll see. But it was a quite interesting development, the reports that, they are already negotiating.
Yeah, no, that's super interesting. So you're saying that maybe they're doing some warm up talking and all that, but then wait for the Iranian elections, which you said are probably in June, or you said
No, no, no.
earlier.
No, 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 no. I think they have until then. If they can't make a deal till
Okay.
then because there is a good chance, I'm gonna get into that now actually,
Yeah.
because there's a good chance this time around Iranian elections will lead to a conservative being elected as the president. I mean,
Okay, so before you get into that, so there was a few interesting things that you said there. So one is that okay, so it seems like the Biden administration definitely doesn't want to piss off Israel too much. So they're not going to be doing all like the favors and everything that Israel did, but of course keeping them in the loop and all that.
oh, of course.
So that's interesting, but not too surprising. And then like the person that you were mentioning from foreign policy, and they're saying Iran has become even more powerful since then, so you shouldn't do the deal. Did they suggest what should be done in the deal? And like in the past 5 years, like does he refer to any examples, like what he means that Iran has been been causing more trouble or
Well,
anything like that?
Mm, he talks about the usual stuff that Iran has been more active in Iraq, the paramilitary groups in Iraq, in Lebanon, that type of thing. He talks about, which he correctly points out, that Iranian oil sales have been recovering somewhat recently, even though the maximum pressure campaign is still in place. In September, he points out Iran had a good growth in oil sales. So, but I do think it's exaggerated. I mean, considering how much pressure Iran has been under,
Yeah.
Iran really hasn't reacted at all
So
to
nothing
US.
new really, unless I didn't know
No,
selling oil was
yeah.
was
No,
problematic.
the usual Iranian,
Yeah.
but to be honest, I do think they're right in that because the Biden presidency is defining itself as opposite of Trump in every single way possible. Um, they have to sort of Iran is in a better position to ask for more concessions and all that, especially like considering that even Obama administration wasn't really complying with the deal. There was even problems. You can check out Trita Parsi's writing for that, who's probably the best expert on Iran-US negotiations. So, now though, there is
I mean,
much
most of the
more
sanctions they
scrutiny.
didn't remove them. No, like did Obama administration remove a lot of sanctions, or he?
They did. I think they suspended a lot of sanctions, but they couldn't do anything about the sanctions passed by the Congress at the time because
Hmm.
Congress was controlled by the Republican Party.
So you have
So
to wait for those to run out, or like does Congress have to reverse
no,
them or
Congress
something?
has to reverse them or repeal them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So those are still in place, of course, and
I don't know. I think some of them Democrats may have removed them, but they are mostly whoever is the president really controls sanction regime and sanction enforcement. So I think they are mostly for show, but whenever you want to use them, they're there to use them, you know. And but now because Biden is defining himself in opposition to Trump, and because Iran has shown quite a lot of patience. Now there is far more scrutiny on US to comply with the deal. And by the way, it's that's a interesting tidbit that last week we had a bit of a Twitter fight between the foreign minister of France and foreign minister of Iran. Foreign Minister of France, I think, tweeted something about France being worried about Iranian missile programs, and then Zarif pointed out. I think I'm not a big fan of Mr. Zarif, but I think this tweet was great. He pointed out that oh, great colleague, great counterpart, or something. You started your job, your current job, by selling weapons of mass, destruction to Saudi Arabia to be used in Yemen and so on. So please don't talk basically bullshit and nonsense about Iran or Iranian missile program. So that was interesting. But yeah, so this time around, Iran can get a better deal, I think.